Hey there, Andres from transformingadhd.com here. If you're a parent and you're parenting a child with the ADHD diagnosis or any other kind of differently wired child, you probably know what it feels like to give consequences. And you probably don't like it either, huh? So consequences don't really work, as you probably know. And they often lead to a lot of conflicts and a lot of just bad moods all around. So the child gets angry, you get angry, and everybody's just off instead of you guys just solving the problem. So the reason why consequences don't work anymore is pretty obvious. Most of the time when you're handing out consequences, you're really being unfair. And everybody knows it. And the child may even say that, no, you're being unfair, that can't be right. And most often it isn't. So I was working with a mom who struggled with consequences, and she said, the consequences don't work anymore. And I can take away all the iPad time I want. He doesn't change his ways. I have no idea what to do anymore. And so what I talked to her about was this problem of giving consequences that are unrelated to the problem. Why would you do that? That's like your partner saying, well, you didn't do the dishes this morning, so really you can't check Facebook the rest of the day. That would be unfair, huh? So what you need to do is take the child's perspective in this. What's really going on here? And if you were the child and you forgot to do something, would it be fair that your mom took away your iPad time? Probably not, huh? So you need consequences that are related to the behavior, or there really shouldn't be any consequences at all. So the problem in the long term is that when your child experiences repeated consequences that just seem unfair, you're going to be raising a child that sees a lot of unfairness in his life. Not just from you, but he'll be on the lookout for unfairness. And you really do not want that. So you want to build a child that sees fairness and that wants to be fair, not to model you for being unfair. You probably also notice that a lot of the times when you give consequences, the problem escalates instead of de-escalates. We don't want that either. So we want to figure out, how can we move through this situation that is not going as well as it should, where you would want to give a consequence as a kind of learning mechanism, but where you know this learning mechanism just doesn't work with your child. So what do you want to do instead? That's the big question. I have some suggestions. First, you want to bring in a little space around this child of yours. He probably didn't do it on purpose. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Either way, you want to think in the long term. You want to think about when he is 18 and not about this minute. Because this minute, you're emotionally hijacked. You probably feel that he let you down, or that something went wrong and not as we planned. This whole thing is really not about you, but the whole parenting situation that you are in is about looking at what is it that he needs to be able to do when he is 18, or whenever you are planning to let him out in the real world. So you want to bring in some patience, and that's patience on your part. Then you want to think about habits and routines as something you build not just once, and not just by letting your child know what the routine should be, but if there is a routine, you want to set the child up to not be able to fail. And I realize that's probably a big task for you with your child, but I have some ideas for you. Because most often we give the child an assignment or a task to do, and we expect them to do it. We may even say it a few seconds before they actually go and do something else. If they're able to do something else and we want to help them, we should probably just not do the same thing over and over again. I think of that as almost letting the child down. If we do something they can't figure out how to do, and then we give them consequences, why would you then do the same thing again and have them fail and then give them consequences again? What you want to do is think about habits and routines as something you build over time. I think of it as prototyping routines. What you can do instead is look at the process building, the routine building, as something that is in constant motion. If you look at it as something where you started a routine, the kid failed, and then you really haven't built anything but failure. Instead, you want to look at process building as something you build over time. You want to do one thing, see how the child reacts, and then just not give that consequence. Why would you give a consequence if your instructions weren't clear, or if the child really didn't know how to do it, or if the child knew how to do it but had inner conflict and wanted to do something else instead? Do you want to consequence your child out of being impulsive? Probably not, because it's going to burn that part of the child, and the child needs access to that impulsivity later in life when he becomes a builder or an entrepreneur or whatever. So you want to go in with ease. You build that first routine and it fails, but you build a prototype. And if you're a furniture designer and you build a prototype, you sit on that chair, whatever it is that you built, and it turns out it's really uncomfortable. You don't throw it away and start thinking over. You look at it and go, how can I make this chair more comfortable? The same way you should look at your chair, your routine, your habit that you're trying to instill with your child as a first prototype. Now, what worked and what didn't? That's what you want to look at. The things that didn't, how can you support the child? How can you scaffold your child in a way that the child may succeed next time? Then you try that. Whether the child fails or not, it really doesn't matter, because it gives you input to reiterate, build a new prototype of this process that you're putting your child through. And as you go along over the years, even you change, your child changes, everything changes around you. So you want to be constantly evolving and changing these processes to see what works and doesn't work. In the end, you'll get to a routine that your child can manage, where you are setting the child up for success. That's where you want to go, because success breeds success, whereas consequences breeds consequences. I hope that makes sense to you. You want to look at the process and see if you take full responsibility for that process of allowing the child to succeed. What would you change about the process? How would you iterate that process to become stronger and better and be able to help your child manage and successfully go through that process? Then, as you have a successful process, of course, you want to move the responsibility for the process and for initiating the process to the child. But that's a different story. And right now, I just want to invite you to take a good look at what's not working and where you give consequences, and then look at, if you take responsibility for that process and for the child's success, what is it that you need to change about the process? How can you change it? How can you make that process better so that your child will succeed, and eventually, over time, you can hand over that responsibility and you'll have an 18-year-old adult that successfully follows routines. Also, in any way you can, you want to bring your child into this process changing, process building. Everything can be talked about in the perspective of, hey, I told you to do this, you didn't do it. I'm sorry, I must have done something wrong. How can I help you better succeed with this? If you take this approach to your child and help your child help you make better processes around the child and for you to help the child, then you'll see massive gains in the success rate and so much fewer conflicts and consequences in your home. I'm Anders Rønnow from Transforming ADHD. If you want to learn more about your mind, your child's mind, the ADHD, and everything about how you can transform ADHD from the inside out, take a look at the website transformingadhd.com. You can click the link below, and if you feel like it, give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you again.